in my self-sovereignty.
Welcome to the Aisling Health Show, where you'll be inspired to reclaim your health and power. So welcome to today's episode on the Moving from Fear to Trust series. I am so honoured to be joined here by Niamh Cronin. Thank you so much, Niamh, for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Aisling. I'm so honoured to be here, and today's a very special day too, 11/11. I feel like, there's no coincidence that we're meeting today to have this conversation, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this conversation will go. No doubt there will be many things that we will talk about.
Yeah, so I've been witnessing your journey from afar. I've never met you in person yet, but just seeing what you're sharing really resonates, because I think it can be so hard for people who kind of, through different ways come onto their path. But then it's like really being able to come into your own, like who you are, and dropping the programming that tells you that this is how your life should be, or this is how you should operate at a certain point. So I really just want to have that conversation and delve into like how that started for you, and the journey so far, and like what helps you, what supports you to move from fear to trust in your journey, and being able to go into the unknown and allow whatever wants to come through. Because I think we are in such a society that says you need to be productive, you need to be doing, you need to be always showing your worth. So I think in this journey it's really about like dropping into the feminine, that being state, the energy that sometimes it's really being able to go into complete formlessness and not have to show exactly the result straight away. It's like there's a period of the unknown, the uncertainty, the void space, which is why I think for us having this conversation is really speaking this into how it's so valid and needed for people to go into that within their own self. Yeah. So how did you start on this journey?
I just wanted to say, thank you for sharing that. I think in today's world, to be still and to listen to ourselves and to that inner voice goes against, the very grain of society. We live in a world that is just built on distraction, constant go. And I myself was caught up in that world. I think we all have been. And being honest, we get caught up in it from time to time, even when we're doing the work. So my journey, if I was to, I guess, we all have a story. I'm going to probably just take us back to, maybe there's several chapters in my life that I was really having to move from fear to trust. So I'm going to probably take you back to about 8 years ago. I was living here in Ireland. I graduated from school. I was working in the software industry, and it was around that time, the peak of the recession here in Ireland. So graduated with an arts degree, wanting to get into a creative agency and work in graphic design. And there was little or no opportunity there for me. And so I fell into a job in a software company, in Cork, attracting so many international companies there, and saw this as a path to, I guess, make a career for myself. At the same time, I was in a relationship that at the time I didn't realize, but it just wasn't aligned. And I was just living a life that I'd never chosen for myself. And I found myself, I was riddled with chronic fatigue, illness, in and out to the doctors. I was suffering with extreme anxiety and extreme bouts of depression. And my journey was just constantly going to doctors, not getting any answers, getting told I have fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue or all of these kind of things. And it all kind of came to a head when my grandmother at the time was suffering from Alzheimer's, and she was being nursed in an old folks home or in a healing center. And we had been grieving the loss of her for some time because, as you know, it's a degenerative disease. And, we had lost touch with her for some time. But we got a call to say that, you know, things had progressed and that she would be passing, and we were all called to be with her in the home. And I suppose, you know, typical Irish gathering, you know, in that sense, everyone gathered around the bed to say the rosary, and she was a very religious woman. And in some ways, she was my connection to something beyond the physical. Like as I was growing up as a child, she would always speak to me about spirit, and although it was through the religious sense, she was that figure in my life that was the gateway to something beyond what I could see. And I always questioned that there had to be more to this life.
Yeah.
So sitting around that bed, we all decided to go for tea, and I was walking out of the room. I was the last one out of the room, and she was pretty much brain dead at this time, and she opened her eyes, lifted her head, and went to speak something, which is a miracle because the doctors had said it was just her heart that was beating at this stage. And she just went to mouth something to me, and she passed. And the most beautiful sensation just came through the room, and I just felt so much love and light. And there was music playing in the background, and her favorite song was playing as she passed. And it was just so beautiful and profound. And I don't know what it was, and I didn't know at that stage, but something just had completely changed in me. And from that day, it was like a light switch had come on, and it was like she passed a torch over to me in her passing and said, you need to go live your life now. And so that's kind of started very slowly my personal development journey. And over the next few months, I ended my relationship, I quit my job, and I packed my bag and took off to travel to Australia, to travel and to find myself, essentially. And this is a girl like that never did anything on her own, never traveled, never would have thought of doing anything like that. And I guess then fast forward another few years, I obviously ended up staying in Australia. I loved it, and I got another job in software industry there. And quite soon, you know, after like an expensive couple of months traveling and finding myself and reconnecting to my own nature, I fell back into the same rhythm again, working in a job that wasn't aligned. And while, you know, in a few years while I was there, I was very successful. I ended up managing a software division across Australia and New Zealand. And I was the youngest female manager by about 20 years. And I fell into that. I had to prove myself as a woman. I had to hustle, I had to lean in. I had to, and what ended up happening is I crashed and burned, and I collapsed and ended up in a cardiac ward with heart issues at the age of 26. And that was another, you know, moment.
Yeah.
And in some ways, parallel moment. It wasn't my grandmother in the bed this time, it was me. And I remember thinking, you know, what led me to this point in my life? And I knew that this was full stop. I couldn't continue. So again, it felt like another light switch went on. And I remember the days after coming out of the hospital, Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. I think that book crosses most of our paths along the way. And over the next few weeks and months, I went through such a rapid expansion and awakening that now I look back now and I think, wow, it some people would probably call it a spontaneous awakening, because I immediately, once I said yes to choosing to trust that this life was no longer aligned, doorways started opening. I started to feel and sense so much more beyond the visible spectrum. I began to realize how I was naturally intuitive, and I began to heal my body holistically. So completely changing my diet, my lifestyle, and really just investing my time and energy on evolving myself as a person. And quite quickly then, once the path started to accelerate, I could feel like an inner guidance saying that I really just needed to walk away from this other life that I had been living, to really step into being who I truly am, and that meant leaving my corporate job, the security of my job.
Yeah.
Nothing really on the other side. I had studied different coaching courses and modalities to become a certified coach and to help other people at this stage, but I didn't have a business. I probably had a website online, but I didn't have the security. And again, it was just felt that, again, that leap of faith.
Yeah.
And again, taking that leap, I left my corporate job, which meant leaving Australia at the time and entering into the unknown. And every time I find that I have entered the unknown, it's almost like the next piece reveals itself. And that's when, you know, I ended up traveling to different parts of the world, and I was lucky enough to spend time with different Indigenous cultures. And it felt like the next step for me was to really unlearn and shed the societal masks and start remembering an ancient remembrance of who we are as human beings, and the awareness and the intelligence that we have in our body, devoid of any dogma or religion, any spiritual practice, but to strip everything back. And I found myself traveling to different parts of the world and being called just intuitively, again, fear to trust. It's like, you know, fly to Mount Shasta or go to Peru and not knowing how I was going to make it work financially, not knowing why I was even going, but trusting that there was a deeper reason. And every time traveling there and being there and receiving so much remembrance, I learned along the way to, I guess, trust that inner calling. And then, of course, all the time my intention was to really share and give back what I was learning, and to be able to share this in a powerful way with others. And so I returned to Australia, and that's when I met my ex-partner at the time, who was one of the leading transformational coaches in Australia. And there, you know, we joined forces, and that was when, you know, I started teaching and sharing and doing this work with other people all around Australia. And I guess you could say at that stage, you know, it felt like I had manifested that dream life. You know, I had a house on the beach in Byron Bay, the car, I had all the nice things, I had the partner, the community, I was giving, I was in service, and yeah, it felt like, you know, this is it, you know. And we had our lives planned out, and we had visions to build a community in Costa Rica, and yeah, everything was going as it should. And then over time, it started to get clear that internally we were both being called in slightly different directions. Even though we were aligned in our values, we were aligned in our vision, there was something that was just bumping up, you know, we were bumping up against this deeper alignment that we were being called into. And we both returned from a trip away after, you know, taking space to really feel into it and to realize that we were being called to part ways. And while it was a mutual decision to part ways to pursue, you know, this next chapter in our own lives, on another human level, it meant for me, you know, losing everything that I thought I'd created, my home, my community, my business. And again, I was being called into, you know, can you move from fear to trust? Because if you live in fear right now, you would stay in this relationship. he would have stayed in this relationship. It would have impacted every area of our lives, our health, our relationships, and we wouldn't have been able to grow and expand or even, you know, serve our clients in that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that meant me taking this leap, and as a result, letting go, another shedding. And it felt like, on another level, now being able to look back, because, you know, Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward, only looking back. I was still attached and holding on to this identity. And I guess my soul was saying that you can expand further here. And actually, I spoke into this today on my Instagram. I just said, you know, we had built this beautiful community, spiritual community, conscious community, whatever you want to call it, you know, of people. And we would have the most amazing gatherings and events. And it was just so transformative. But it was like as if I couldn't expand anymore, because the real work was calling me to be in the world and to be in the density of the world. And there was a lot of spiritual bypassing, and at the time I was really navigating and discerning through a lot of dogma, even, you know, spiritual dogma that sometimes keeps us distracted. And in some ways I feel like the nudges I was getting from my soul, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, was that you need to leave so that you can go and do the real work. And that meant letting go of everything. And so that period of my life was very challenging, because I literally found myself in the void, in the unknown.
And what helped you to be in that space? Like, maybe not at the time, but looking back, like, what are the things that you did that helped that process? So maybe people who are listening, who find themselves in the void or entering it, might give them some pointers.
So the first thing is not to fight it, because when we fight it, we prolong our suffering. And I found that the moment I embraced being in the unknown and simply said, okay, I'm in the unknown, I embrace it, I surrender to it. What happened is the process sped up, or I would start to receive the next step. I would see, okay, the next step, I'm going to go back to Ireland. Okay, the next step, okay, I'm going to hold a retreat in Ireland. Okay, what does that look like? And it was like everything just started to reveal itself one step ahead of the next. And I think something I just want to touch on is that when we do start to unravel and unplug from I guess, the societal programs, and start to go against the grain, which actually really is in harmony with nature, because most of this Western world is out of sync and harmony with nature, right? But as we sync more with nature, nature is a timeless state, and it creates itself in the moment. So I started to realize that it's very natural and organic when we are creating and moving into alignment with our natural state of being. The void is this natural part of that process. And it's out of the void we create from, and it's out of the void we set in our pure intentions for what we wish to create. Now, in today's world, when we're expecting things to happen just like this, you see, we're programmed to this false synthetic manifestation in a way. And what I started to learn is that in natural law, or in harmony with nature, things are very different. We have to be still, right? We have to be in the feminine. We have to hear and listen. And then the moment that guidance comes, we got to take action. And then what happens is the fear comes up. So that action, you need to leave this relationship. Okay. But when we take action and move into trust, even if it doesn't make logical sense. And the thing is, if we're on this path, it's not meant to make logical sense, because we're moving from our heads to our hearts, and that intelligence does not operate through the intellect. So when we're using our feelings and accessing our emotional intelligence and working from our bodies and our hearts, it is a feeling, it is a knowing, and then we need to lean into our masculine and take action based on that feeling. And when we do, no one can give you this experience. This is what I learned. We have to do it ourselves, and it's the direct experience of taking that leap. It's like you learn that you can fly, and I couldn't gift you that. I wish I could gift that experience to everyone, but we can't. We have to take the leap, and trust that the next step will be there. And the more we do that, the more resilience and the more trust we build.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I've recently, I don't know if you've seen, I've been doing a sea swimming practice. So I go into the very cold sea that's near me in Phoenix, and it's literally like, I don't know, 7 degrees out, and I'm taking off my clothes and I'm wearing my bikini and I'm jumping into the cold water. And it's just, again, to condition myself to build that resilience of my mind's going, don't do it. And I'm like, I can. And when I do it, now I'm obviously not staying in for prolonged periods of time. I'm not going to freeze myself, but I'm going in, swimming, and then coming out. But it's like it's training that part of me to just be like, build that trust, that self strength, and that resilience to be in the unknown, like jumping into something that feels so uncomfortable, and then to realize, oh my gosh, this is the most invigorating thing I could ever experience in my whole life. I feel fully alive when I do that. So yeah, and as you say, you can only speak to that. You can't give that to anyone. But I think what is my intention behind having this podcast series is really for people to have just the kind of a lighthouse to go, well, that person is taking that leap, that person is trusting in their process. Mine is not going to look like that, but it's giving me the call to trust in my process. And I hope that that's what this will spark in people to kind of, because I think when you hear these things, and it's not about just having more information, it's really about being able to take these nuggets and put them into your own experience. Because really, like, for any evolution to go through us, we have to meet those walls of resistance, which is like hitting against the known and going into the unknown. And our mind, as you say, wants to pull us back into what we know, like pull us back into that relationship, pull us back into that situation that we don't want to leave. So we have to tap back into that wisdom, as you say, in our hearts, in our bodies. They just know, like, you just feel it, don't you? And I think that's it's such a simple message, but it takes a lot of practice, a lot of discipline, and a lot of like pulling away from who you used to be. Like, you have to allow yourself to become somebody that you don't even yet know in this process.
And it's all I can describe it, and I've been having these conversations with so many people lately, is that there is a calling now, there is a whispering that everyone is hearing. I don't think anyone is deaf to this calling and whisper that's happening on the planet right now. And we are being called back to nature. And for me, nature, yes, nature, the trees, the plants, the animals, like, we're being called back to our nature. So we're being called back to our nature. And that is the original premise of who we are as human beings. And remembering that we are connected to the very fabric of everything that exists in this world. And we're coming back to the remembrance that there is an organic awareness and emotional intelligence and memory that resides in our body. And that's the yearning, and that's the whisper, and that's what people are feeling called. And it may be manifesting of, oh, I need to leave my job, or this relationship isn't aligned, or, I am seeing people taking even bigger leaps of, I'm feeling called to leave Ireland, or I'm feeling called to travel and live in this particular country. And these yearnings and these callings are something deeper that is calling us forth, so that we can enter into an evolutionary process that needs to happen on the planet right now, because we have been locked and fixed
Yeah.
into a very limited set of, or how would I say, we've been seeing the world through a very limited lens.
Mm-hmm.
And we've reached a point on the planet now where we've reached the utmost density.
Yeah.
So we're seeing extreme war, we're seeing extreme poverty, pain, sadness, depression, anxiety, and we've reached that melting point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the only antidote is we have to wake up. We have to open our eyes. We have to start seeing beyond this limited spectrum. And it starts with us taking those first steps, so that, you know, it's like moving through the threshold. You don't know what's behind the door until you cross the threshold.
Yeah.
And I feel like moving fear to trust, it's not just for the courageous ones. It's a necessary step for all people right now, because we have to see. Next year is about seeing what is real, and we will have to unlearn everything. And I know I say this with so much conviction, and I always say take what you need and leave the rest, but this is where I've come to know in my own journey, is that we have to be willing to see what is not real, so that we can remember who we truly are.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much resistance to that, which is why I think, as you say, I think it's, yes, it is for the brave to kind of be the way showers of that, but that's for people then to actually realize, okay, this is for me as well. It's not just for a select few people that decide to do it. You know, it's like some people are going to just be on the threshold of leading that in their own way, to then send back the messages to other people who are like feeling that call and going, where do I begin? You know? And it's like, you know, a lot of the times, like I always say, I didn't decide to come on my path. I was pulled kicking and screaming, literally, because there's no way I would have I just didn't have the awareness anyway. You know, it's just, if it's going to happen, as you say, it's going to happen for everybody, whether you want it or not. But I think you can make it a little bit more graceful if you don't fight it and you go with what's showing up for you, as opposed to, oh no, I'll pretend that that's not really real, or that's not happening, and I'll stay back here because this is more comfortable. But it's like, we're not here to just be comfortable, we're here to evolve, and that requires being comfortable with the uncomfortable process of being in the unknown and being in that void. And that's where all of creation happens, and all of the magic and all the synchronicities can come in that space. So it's just great to be able to be sitting here and having this conversation. And it's like, and it is from a place of conviction, because I think it's from your experience and it's from my experience, and I think that's where you can speak from that place of knowing, because you've lived it, as opposed to, oh, I read that in a book somewhere, you know, in an easy way. But it's like, it has to really come from your own lived experience. But I think just hearing messages like this that give you that, I suppose, an anchor when you are in that unknown, when you are in the void. I think sometimes you do need to have like a certain messenger to appear and to say, this is perfectly natural. This is totally part of the process of you unraveling right now. And it's like what you said, it's like the winter, the void, like inevitably the spring will come. So like, look to nature, will always show you the next season will come. So just embrace the season of where you are right now.
I love that you said about the seasons, because there's this one quote, and I often say it to myself when I'm in the season of, because, you know, nature, and I know you know this as well, is like, there's natural flow of destruction with creativity, you know. One thing goes through destruction, another thing is born from that. There's the quote, Cynthia Orcelli, and she says, for a seed to grow into its truest expression, its shell must crack, its insides must come out. For anyone that does not understand transformation, it looks like utter destruction. And so when I'm in those periods, which I am all the time because we're always moving through death and rebirth, I have to remind myself that I am evolving, and that right now my life may look like it's in destruction, and to everyone else they may think that it is destruction, but I am evolving. I am in the midst of going through a very necessary part of my life, of my journey, of my evolution. And this alchemical process that's happening right now needs to happen so that I can extract more wisdom, so I can expand. And it's also like reminding yourself that when we're in those deep dark moments, I call that contraction. We're contracting, right? We go into ourselves. We go into the darkness. It's very necessary that we do that so that we can then expand from that. Because when we contract and we allow ourselves to go into the pain, to release it, to feel it, we then can allow ourselves to learn through that and expand even further. So there's a natural contraction and expansion process. And the other quote that I love is Rumi, and he says, the light enters through the wound. And right now on the planet, what is happening, we have more people experiencing anxiety, depression, having suicidal tendencies, experiencing emotional overwhelm. And what is happening right now is that what was dense and what was held in the body for some time, our suppressed emotions, our own traumas. We all have trauma at different degrees in our lives. And so we've suppressed trauma, suppressed emotions, and then our body stores every memory of everything that we've experienced in this life. It also holds all the memory of everything our parents have felt and experienced, our ancestors, and then never mind all the memory of our collective past. And so what's happening right now is what we used to be able to numb out and not feel. We are being forced to feel. And you know, we can look at quantum physics to quantify this, you know, because a lot of spiritual teachers will talk about what's happening on the planet right now. But for me, it's like this grounded understanding that the frequency of the earth is increasing, right? And that can be measured now. And that means that particles are vibrating quicker. So that means that the density that was being held in our cells and in our body is starting to shift. And our nervous systems are becoming overwhelmed with emotion. Now, what can happen through our programmed lens, and I went through this process, is we start experiencing depression, overwhelm. We don't know what we're feeling. It's just too much.
Everything's too much,
and we equate that to it. This is negative. Or we go to a doctor and we're prescribed a pill. Right now, I'm not saying that that's not necessary, because earlier in my journey it was necessary. For me now, with the tools and the awareness, it wouldn't be my path. But when we realize that what is happening right now is we have to feel, we have to allow what's arising. And if we are in the dark and in that moment, you embrace that, and you know that you are this is part of this evolutionary process, and that you are not broken. I'll repeat that because I think we all need to hear this. You are not broken, you are coming online. And what I mean by that is we're beginning to feel more. The mind can comprehend, because our emotions, what I'm remembering is that our emotions are a mechanism to translate energy and frequencies beyond the limited spectrum. And feeling more. It's like going into a supermarket and all of a sudden you're feeling the colors that are on the posters and on the products, and you're feeling the vibrations of every person that you interact with. You're also feeling the thoughts that are running through the collective field. And it's like 1,000 watts of electricity running through your nervous system. And then of course you're dealing with your own pain and trauma from your childhood and so forth. And so what's happening is that the brain doesn't know what's happening. The mind can't comprehend it.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there's a part of our body and our heart and our intuitive awareness that does. And I'm here to share that when we embrace this as a necessary process and something that is positive, and we call forth the tools and the awareness, they will show up.
Yeah.
And the moment we feel it and allow ourselves to release it, what happens is then we create space for that awareness that lies beneath. You know, Rumi says light enters through the wounds. So once we release our wounds and do this deeper work, we start to create more space to embody and integrate in harmony with our nervous system. Again, we have to slow down to do this. So this is why many are feeling called to meditate now and relax more, because when we're in that state, we actually can begin to consciously integrate and understand what we're feeling. We can start to discern what is mine and what is not. And this is what I'm so passionate about sharing with other people, is this is what I've learned. These are the tools that I've learned to help and support me integrate this level of awareness. Because as a collective, this is where we're going. We are beginning to remember that we have an intelligence that is far more sophisticated than any artificial intelligence that's ever been created.
Yeah.
And it's lies within our body and within our feeling senses. And we are in that chaos right now.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, we don't know what we're feeling. And I know I went in deep there, but I just feel like right now that sometimes I share what I need to hear myself too. And it's also because it's what we all need to hear.
Yeah. Big time. But as you say that, it feels like it is this kind of messy middle that we're in right now. And it's, again, it's just embracing this. It's a natural process that's coming through us. And then, as you say, and this has been my own experience as well, when you call forth those tools to be able to handle that and to be able to integrate that, they just appear somehow. You know, they just show up in your life and you're just shown, you know, this is the person to support you, or go do this modality, or, you know, it's just being open to, like, when you are in that empty void space, or you're feeling all the range of emotions that are just literally overwhelming you on a daily basis. It's just kind of just going, okay, show me what I need to do to be able to integrate all of this.
I love that you said that, the show me, because there was a period in my life where I was in the unknown, and one of the things I forgot to do was to say, show me. I'm ready to see. And we have to request that. Yeah,
totally. Because it was about 2 weeks ago, I woke up and I was just feeling so heavy with emotion. And I was just feeling so heavy that I couldn't even bring myself to do like movement, or, you know, the things that make me feel good. I was so heavy. I was just like, oh, I'm just like feeling just total weighted despair. I'm just like, where am I? What am I doing? Does this make sense? Is any of this going to go anywhere? So I literally woke up then and I was just like, okay, show me. I need a sign. I need to be shown. So I got inspired to go to my friend Connie's house, who's around the corner from me. Walked into her kitchen and she's like, oh, Aisling, I have goddess cards. Do you want me to give you a reading? And I was like, yes. And I just laughed and I was just like, this is my sign. And she did the reading. And the first card was, you're a conduit for the divine. You're here to teach the healing arts and have faith. All your prayers are being answered. You just need to build your faith. And it was just like, and that just switched me around, because I think, again, it wasn't just about those messages. It was about me being in such despair, asking for a sign and being given it so immediately. That is the thing that builds the trust, is when you have those direct experiences that you are being listened to, and, you know, whatever you're asking for, that it's actually being shown to you. And then that kind of that sends back evidence then to your nervous system and to your mind. Oh yes, this is actually trustworthy. Like you're building this kind of evidence list of trust that you can, put in. It's almost like a bank account of trust that you can go, I can file this away for those other times when I'm feeling exactly like this, really heavy, really despairing, totally overwhelmed, frazzled. What did I do the last time? Okay, it's not going to be the exact same, but I can call that forward again. I think that's so important to share that as well with everyone, to start building their evidence list, and not to dismiss those things as, oh, that was only coincidence that she pulled out those cards, or or I heard that song on the radio, or I saw that podcast, or whatever it is that flashes up in your reality. It's like, take note and slow down and hear and see that you're always being supported, and you're always being guided, and you're always being brought back into feeling as good as you possibly can in that moment.
I love that you shared that. And as you were talking, when you're in those moments, you say you'd file away something, so that when you're in that darkness or in that moment, you're like, okay, if it happened back then, it'll happen again now. And I found myself, this past year in this prolonged period of the unknown, because I'd been in periods of the unknown, but this stretch seemed quite lengthy. And I, really was, even with the tools, even with the things that I'd learned, I'd reached this point where I really had to dig deeper than I ever thought I would to trust. And it was actually only I was in Maui in Hawaii recently, and I met this man. He's called Keone Hanalei, and he derives from a very ancient lineage of people in Hawaii that are derived from ancient Mu, and they've kept this wisdom hidden for hundreds of thousands of years. It was passed down and kept secret by the female line, and it's only now that the kapu has been released, which is that they can now share these teachings with the world, because they believe that people are ready to integrate this level of awareness consciously. And he speaks about this narrative that we've been playing out on the planet, which is the suffering narrative. And if you are someone that's listening right now and you have experienced extreme suffering in your life, and you've been through cycles of suffering, or you might be in a prolonged period right now of suffering, your healing right now is not just your own, it's directly connected to the collective healing that's happening on the planet, because we are all being forced individually and collectively to face the cultural narratives, and this narrative of suffering is what he spoke to. We have to be with it. We have to be with it. And I found myself for the first few months, I just wanted to get out of it. So I was trying to do everything I could to fix the problem, and nothing was working. And then I would give up again. And then I'd have to go, okay, I'd keep trying to fix the problem through an old lens or an old solution. But the deeper healing that happened was actually me being with it and going deeper than my own personal experience, and feeling into this deeper program that was playing out on a collective level that is stored in our body as a memory. And I know I might go a little bit out there right now, but our body is wired, not just mentally, but chemically and emotionally too. So we've got these memories of suffering, say, for example, that's just one narrative or archetype that we've been playing out. And our bodies are wired to react to that. So in some ways, our body has become addicted to certain chemical reactions or chemicals that are released within our body, because when we react to a certain situation, we enter into certain thoughts that trigger certain emotions, that trigger chemicals in our body. And what ends up happening is we create this emotional, mental, and energetic cage that keeps us stuck. Now, it's a lot more complex than this, because there's a myriad of other things going on as well. But the easiest way to break ourselves free from these narratives is to be with it,
Mm-hmm.
to stare it in the eye and say, I see you. I no longer choose you.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, our reality shifts because we are taking our power back here and realizing that we are creator beings and we have sovereign choice. And you cannot be in suffering and in creativity at the same time. And that was the moment I faced the suffering in the eye. I chose creativity.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing. I just decided that I was going to create because what I was feeling, the energy was so big, I had to put it into something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then I started to write. I started to draw. I started to write. And then I started reading what I was writing. And I was like, there's something in this. So I started recording them and I started sharing them with friends. And then friends started like writing back saying that they were hugely activated by my voice and what I was sharing, and that they were going through so much transformation just by hearing these spoken word pieces. And then I started drawing. In fact, I've always been an artist, but when I started drawing, I realized that it broke me out of the suffering because I entered into this no time space. And I played this game with myself, and I encourage anyone to try this, whether it's music, art, drawing, any form of creativity, is I just picked the pen up and I realized that every time I needed to know what I was going to draw, and I realized I was controlling the process. So I just let the pen move, and every time I try and think, oh, you're drawing a line, you're drawing a square, I'd start again.
Yeah.
And I trained myself or untrained myself. And I found I'd start drawing and I'd enter into this space and I would just start experiencing so much flowing through me and so much knowing and awareness. And I just entered into the most profound meditative state and receiving deep awarenesses around our universal origins, our earthly origins, just the awareness that I guess we all hold in our body, but it was just coming alive in me. And I started just sharing the artworks with friends, and without telling them, anything about the artwork, just by looking at them, they received the same insights just by contemplating with the artwork. And so my journey in some ways was healing that collective wound by choosing to take back my power, choosing to enter into creativity. And I'm actually about to just do a post soon, and it says, creativity is the greatest form of activism that we have right now, because we can't be in suffering and be creating something new at the same time.
Yeah.
And little did I know that, over the last 18 months now, it's never been more clear than ever before my purpose, and that I'm here to ignite remembrance of our original genetic blueprint and how to feel again through the arts, through vibrational art, and through all forms of creative expression. And it's been a journey, and I know the people listening here right now, if you can find it in yourself to dig deeper than you ever have and see the suffering that you're experiencing and see it and choose something different and enter into your creativity and listen to whatever wants to be created through you, that is the most, well, I feel is the most powerful medicine that we can give to the world right now, because we need to start creating anew. If we're looking at fixing the problem, we're just becoming part of the problem.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. And I totally resonate with that in terms of my own experience of grief with my mom and her passing. Then I met my now book mentor, Mary Helen Hensley, and she's like, you need to put this into a book. And as soon as I started that process, it's just been the most healing thing ever, because it elevates you out of, like what you're saying, out of the suffering. It's like it brings you into a whole different experience. You can integrate, you can transmute it, you can, find the depths of medicine that you need for your unique self through that creative process. And it's just, yeah, like the healing arts, like the feminine creativity is so powerful and so wants to be seen and valued and validated right now. Do you know, really just kind of going, this is what I'm creating and I'm staying on this. I'm not feeding into the problem. I'm not, because that's what I realized even over the past couple of months. I was like, I've been doing this work, moving from fear to trust, you know, I'm writing the book, I'm doing the steps, I'm doing as much as I can. But I realized, I was like, what was underneath that was I was feeding a lot of my energy to, I'm not sure if this is going to work because I can't see it yet. Do you know, because it's like, it's the feminine, it's the unknown, it's the depth of, you know, the black waters of the ocean. You can't see anything. And learning to choose to trust in that, I think, is like a huge step in being able to be on that creative path and being able to say, I'm going to actually devote my energy into creating the new as opposed to feeding the old. And that's like something that I feel is a discipline, but I think the more you commit to it, the more it elevates you, the more you want to, like, you just naturally gravitate towards it. It just becomes a very organic process then. It's not like a forced thing that you have to force yourself to think a certain way, or, you know, try and override your biology, or, you know, hack yourself into it. You know, it's like, there's no hacking here. It's a very organic journey.
The hacks, the quick fixes, they are like a band-aid, right? Or they'll help, quick fix solution, but ultimately we'll have to face ourselves. And I guess in my journey I was luckily enough, you know, able to see through, I guess, the levels of distraction, you know, even within you know, the spiritual worlds where, you know, it's about creating and manifesting what you desire. And yes, it's very easy once you get into it to, you know, master the laws of attraction and things like that and start creating what you desire. Until then, one day you wake up and you realize that what you've been creating is an image or an idea that's already been created, and that it's not a picture, an image, or an idea that is coming from the depths of your being. It's an image that's been portrayed through the stories, through our history books, or through cultural and societal conditioning, that this is who you are as a woman or man, and this is how you need to live your life, and these are the things you can aspire to be in your life. And I realized that I wasn't creating for myself because I was creating through these outdated ideals of who I need to be as a woman. And I think that's what happened when I reached that state of the house and the car and the business and everything. And I think what's happening right now is, like, there is an emergence of people who are unplugging from that, and we're remembering that nature creates very differently, and that nature, to create, it needs to be in the unknown, it needs to be in the chaos, and that's the natural state of creation. And in fact, we are right now creating something that's never been created before, and so it is like a blindfold, like a blindfold on. And it's kind of, this is quite a good, this is just coming through right now, it's a good metaphor, right? We have a blindfold on, so our heads can't see out anymore, or we can't see with our minds anymore, so we can only feel our way. So if you had a blindfold and you're walking through the forest, you have to rely on a deeper sense, or deeper sensory awareness. You're feeling, right? And you're listening, and we just have to take one step at a time, trusting that where we're going and that we are creating something that is very necessary. And in fact, it is the antidote for all these other problems over here that we can't fix through the same consciousness. You know, Albert Einstein, he says that I can feel like the passion, or both our passion, as we're talking into this and speaking into this, but it's really refreshing even for me, and hopefully for you and listeners, that, like, there are other people out there that are feeling the way we are, that are living the way we are. I think we can feel like quite isolated sometimes.
Big time. So before we wrap up, what are your final words to everyone listening who are here and ready to move from fear to trust and bring their unique piece into the tapestry of reality?
This quote I read the other day, but it was from the unknown. There was no person's name, but if someone does know who wrote this, I'd love to know. It was the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write. It'll be those who will be unwilling to unlearn everything that they need to in order for them to truly see who they are.
That's amazing. So where can everybody find you to connect with you?
Thank you so much, Aisling. Well, I've just launched a new online space. It's called Origen, and it's spelled Origen. And the website is originhome.app. So it's an online space and platform. And if anyone wants to connect with me on social media, I hang out more so on Instagram these days, but you can find me at Niamh Yvonne Cronin on Instagram and on Facebook.
Oh, thank you so much, Niamh. This has been a total pleasure. And yeah, I'm so honored to have this conversation with you and can't wait to share it with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode. Do you need support on your healing path? Join us inside Aisling Health School, where you'll receive guidance and community to reclaim your health. Click the link below to learn more.